Hello and welcome to another edition of Heal with the Real. We do Heal with the Real because I invite guests that are survivors to thrivers of trauma, of domestic abuse, and they're here to tell their story of how they move through that trauma and the things that really, really help them. And Heal with the Real was started so that we can help other people thrive along the way that are still on that journey, and hopefully can hear the podcast and hopefully find some tips, or maybe some advice that resonates with you. So yeah, my guest today is Dr. Risley-Childs. I'd love you to just say a little bit about yourself and your background and where you're from and what you do.
Yeah. Well, now I'm a writer and soon to be published author. I retired as a board certified psychiatrist here in the States in California. And I've been practicing for 25 years, I think, 25 years as a psychiatrist. And prior to that, family practice. And graduated from medical school almost 30 years ago. So it was quite a lucrative career, but I'm ready to move forward and be able to inspire the masses to heal and let them know that they can heal, that you can
Yeah.
heal. And that's ultimately the message, is that you can heal.
Yeah. And so talk me through, because this is an amazing career, 25 years.
Yeah.
Talk me through those, because I know that when we originally spoke, you've just had an amazing career
Yeah.
and pathway. And I'd just like to understand what made you get into psychiatry all those years ago.
Yeah. Well, I went into medicine to be an OBGYN. I was fascinated with fetal development. I thought it was very beautiful. I got to medical school, not the first time around. I got a sea of rejection letters, but I reapplied the following year and, took care of the things that I needed to do to get those MCAT scores up, et cetera, to get where I needed to go. And it was a blessing to have that year off, because I don't think I would ever have had the class that I had that supported me through my first turning point of leaving home, if I didn't have that group of classmates. They were a really special group. So I delivered 80 babies. I loved all of it. I loved the OR. I loved the surgical field, but it requires a lot of stamina. And I just didn't have the stamina. And I'm really just learning now that the reason why I didn't have that stamina was because of the trauma. And a colleague, friend of mine said, people with PTSD are the most exhausted people. But there's hope on the other side of that. I have far more energy now than I did 25 years ago, and I am more productive since shedding that shame, that guilt, that anger, that irritation, and forgiving both my family and myself. So there is something on the other side of that. But how I changed from OB into psychiatry, it wasn't immediate. It was first realizing I didn't have the stamina, and I was driving to the hospital for the third weekend in a row, and I was sitting there waiting in the jug handle, waiting for the light to turn green, and I said, "This sucks." And okay, if this internship, which the internship I chose was rather benign compared to some other internships, and I said, if this internship is this bad, what's an OBGYN residency going to be like? And I didn't think that I could make it through. It was just a really reality check. And I ended up speaking to a surgeon friend of mine who was encouraging me into the surgical field. He was giving me more responsibilities than most of the other interns in the OR, because he wanted to train me as a surgeon. He knew that was one of my passions. And we had a long talk about it, but I just really didn't know what I wanted to do. But he told me something that his mother told him. He said that, you know, maybe it was OB that got you into medicine, but you're really meant for another niche and you just want to find your niche. And so about 6 to 8 months later, I was on a psychiatry rotation and I loved it. I loved it. My attending was Singer, Clifford Singer. He's Jerry Seinfeld's best friend.
Okay.
That's my one point of contact to the famous comedian. But they were very good friends, and but I was working with Cliff very closely, and I just loved it. And then I talked to him, and I said, you know, I think I'm meant for psychiatry, and he said, you'd be great at it. You know, I was the only resident who was doing the whole axis diagnosis, and I was the only resident that was enthused about it. And when I was on call late at night at 3 o'clock in the morning, when they said, hey, you have an admission, you know, it's a little old lady who's manic, I was excited about it. You know, I wasn't excited about the heart attacks. I wasn't excited as much about the ORs and the other, but I was excited about the people and their brains and the fascination of what goes on and what that brain can conjure up. It was amazing to me. And so I went through it, and I transferred my program to a psychiatry residency, and it was a very lucrative career. It was a very fulfilling career. I've done a wide variety in that realm. Some people just stick with outpatients, some stick with, you know, emergency psychiatry or consult. I did it all. The only thing I didn't do was any of the more of the procedures. Like I did train in ketamine, but I didn't start my clinic. I initially considered starting a clinic, and then I changed my mind about that because I knew I wanted to pursue something else. And so it was a great career. I did love it. I love my patients. I still have a couple. I have 2 patients that I hang on to that that are just very special to me, and I see them every, you know, every so many months. And yeah, but it's time to move forward. It's not really moving on. It's moving forward in a different capacity. So I'm still a
Sure.
healer. I'm a healer by nature, and I'm ready to have a different career and heal through my writing and through my public speaking.
We'll come on to that shortly, but you mentioned that there wasn't enough space for your head at that time because of trauma. Can we dig a bit further into that and
You
just
want to know about the trauma?
a little bit of background of the story and how
Yeah.
you actually managed to move through that in the end? Because
Yeah.
yeah, we I think we build or form a resilience, and yeah, I'd love to find out a little bit more about how you managed to become more resilient through that.
You know, I think resilience is overrated. And resilience is really something for children that should be reserved for, you know, my child injured her hand yesterday in soccer. She sprained her wrist. She's whining and crying this morning about having to go to school with this sprained wrist. Well, I know last night she was playing around on her Switch, so it can't be that bad. It's hurting her. She knows it. But, you know, the fact that she's going to go to school and she's still going to go to class, and luckily she doesn't have gym today, so she doesn't have to worry about that. And, you know, she's just going to have to get some ice and put it up and suck it up and get through school because she can still learn. And that's resilience. What I had was just downright brutality and violence. And that didn't make me more resilient. I've heard it takes fire to forge steel, but even metals have a breaking point, and they get overused and they fail. And so I've been on that verge several times in my life where I was absolutely at my melting point, and I was, you know, nearly broken and taken in. But I've always been a believer in motivational quotes and positive self-talk. And there are always times I was selling Mary Kay cosmetics to learn about business for a while. And our Mary Kay director said, most people give up when success is right around the corner. And so whenever I'm faced with a challenge, things aren't going right, things are I'm having a hard time with getting something to go where it is that I need to go, I think of that quote. Most people give up when success is right around the corner. Be on nimble feet, change around what you're doing, try another way, go over, under, around, and through, but you will get there.
Yeah.
And that's been my life's mantra. And that's made a huge difference. That's what's made a difference. Now, the abuse, I hate calling it abuse. That's another thing. I don't like calling it child sexual abuse, child abuse. It's violence. This is child sexual violence. No child should have to put up with what I had endured. It started with domestic violence in my home. So my father began beating my mother, or smacked her, the first time when she was pregnant with my second brother, with my middle brother. And he would hospitalize her. She was beaten terribly bad. I was about 3 years old when I witnessed her being thrown down the stairs. And I had always thought she had fallen down the stairs until I spoke to her just a few years ago and said, I remember you being, falling down the stairs. She said, I never fell down those stairs. I was thrown down those stairs. And it really altered it made me realize some of the other things that were said about my father going down and saying, get away from your mother, and then grabbing her. So that made sense. And I was able to visualize that again. But the sexual abuse started as early as 3. I was molested by a gang member. My father introduced me to him, offered me to him. I didn't recognize it as child sexual abuse or child sexual violence or molestation until recently, when I was getting treated with psychedelic mushrooms. It brought back mushrooms or any of the psychedelics, whether it be ketamine, mushrooms, LSD, anything Sasha Shulgin has created. They're autobiographical. And what they do is they basically open up, they're like a key that unlocks those doors in your mind, because when you've suffered inappropriate things, when you've suffered trauma, you will close off a portion or all of that trauma so that you survive, because otherwise you may go completely insane being tortured through it all. And what the materials do is they're that key, and they unlock that, and they allow you to look at it from a third person perspective. So you witness yourself, your own body, the child body, or whatever body it was during that time, and it takes you through it. And something in forgiveness that Robert Enright talks about, one of the first stages of forgiveness, is recognizing that you were wronged, that you had a hurt, and that you were injured. And that's the first step. And to be able to get to forgive Big John and my father for taking me to him, I had to see it. I had to see it for myself. And honestly, I was in a crisis after I just recognized that, because my whole life, Big John was this big burly figure that I loved, who loved me and who paid attention to me when my father did not. And I didn't recognize that the bouncing on his knee, I wasn't just bouncing on his knee, but the story came together when I reached down to pick up my clothes and to get dressed. And that the adult in me then was able to see what actually happened. And I was in crisis for a couple of days, and my healer came and we talked about it. And I was able to take another treatment, and he got me through it. And so I got past that crisis. I'm still uncovering some memories. I think there are some further deeper memories from my brothers. I remember we were very young. I was about 4 years old, maybe 5, somewhere in that range. where my brother asked me, my oldest brother said, "Hey, do you wanna play a game? Do you wanna hump? What is that?" Well, that's where we take off our clothes, we leave on our underwear, and I bounce up and down on top of you. Now, my brother's 7 years older than me, so he was 11, maybe 12 years old when this was going on. And, he was babysitting me at 11, 12 years old, while my mother was working. And then he encouraged my other brother to do the same thing. I'm still uncovering some memories. They're not complete yet. Interesting thing about memory storage, the amygdala and the hippocampus both store short-term memories into long-term memories, but those memories aren't stored linearly. So there's different smells, associations, colors, visuals that go along into storing memory, and those memories get chopped up into pieces. And so when I'm looking at, the story about Big John didn't happen in just one trip. It took at least two before it all came together. And there's a few other things with connections with my mother that took 3 or 4 different trips to bring it all together, to be able to see and visualize the entire story as it unfolded. And so I'm still looking at, I know there was something that happened at a fort. I think money was involved and my brother's friends. And I think there was something that happened at a baseball, the baseball dugout, I know my brothers would take me over to the baseball field sometimes. And so I think there was something happened there, but I'm not clear on it yet. So that whole thing hasn't come to fruition yet. But the biggest things that happened or the largest, were when my stepfather came into our lives. And there was always yelling. There were frequent beatings, and the voyeurism started immediately. And that continued on to touching me, putting his hands between my legs, his oral sex at 13. I hadn't even kissed a boy yet. And getting angry with me when I was 16, 3 years later. I'm sorry, the dogs are barking. 16, 3 years later, he's angry at me that I did kiss a boy, which was appropriate, and he was angry at me that I had done so. And then when I disclosed just a little bit, just enough to get help, when I was in college, I had ended up confronting him about what happened when I was 13, and that turned into his telling me, "You're in love with me."
Wow.
And my feelings, I wasn't allowed to own my own feelings. There was, "You think this, you think that, you think I'm a pervert, you think that's what you think, I'm not," and then convincing me that he is not a pervert. And that all lost.
Gaslighting. So a lot of
Yeah,
gaslighting.
there was no autonomy. I had no autonomy over my body, over what I was to think, over the clothes that I wore. The academics, there were some academia. There were some things he just couldn't find a way to deny my going into a science field, but he could deny me not to take French or not to take other things that I wanted to take, that, some of the joie de vivre type courses. And everything was controlled. Everything from whether or not I took a shower, or whether or not I washed my hair, or whether or not I crossed the street to check the mail. Every aspect of my life was controlled. I mean, he even had my brother's bowel movements controlled. If you want to know the control, he would complain that my brother would have a bowel movement at 10 o'clock in the morning, and he would yell and scream that my brother was in the bathroom at 10 a.m. because you should do that at 6 a.m. like a normal person, because that's when he goes. And that kind of control over, demanding control over bodily functions. It was my healer, when I talked to him through all of these things, he says, it's a wonder you're not insane.
Yeah.
And there is a correlation between bipolar disorder and schizophrenia with child sexual abuse. So yeah.
You mentioned about the psychedelics.
Mhm.
Things like the psychedelics and ketamine, and there was another thing that you mentioned
There's
there.
so
Illegal. They're all illegal in the UK, but I'd love to
ketamine,
find.
well, it's so ketamine is an anesthetic, and doctors use that in the OR. Anesthesiologists use it. I don't know whether or not ketamine is on the formulary or not in the UK, but it's emergency room doctors use it all the time. It's extremely safe medication. It's the medication, I like to tell people this because then they can relate to it. Ketamine is what the children, the 13 that were stuck in the cave, was that in the Philippines, I think it was? That
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, the cave divers, they were all military. I actually spoke to I did my ketamine training with the doctor who was in charge of all that. He was a
Oh
military
wow.
doctor, and he was in charge of all that. And he had told me that ketamine is the only thing that they would work with because they were familiar with it. They would use it. And because they'd use it out in the field, it's one of the best friends of people who are out there, who are physically injured in wartime. All the medics use ketamine because it's extremely safe. It's not safe in a bathtub. It should not be given at home without supervision. And that's what happened with Matthew Perry, because it's an anesthetic. You are paralyzed when you are using it. You can't move. So, and even in my training, ominously, the man that was training us, he had said, you don't want to give ketamine at home. These lozenges and such are very dangerous, because what if you have someone who decides that he's going to do ketamine and take a bath and then he drowns? And of course that's and then several months later, we learned that Matthew Perry died because he had drowned. He had drowned in his hot tub after taking ketamine. He was paralyzed, and he probably knew it. And that's what's even sadder, is that he probably knew that he was drowning. But in a controlled setting, in a medical setting, ketamine is very safe. These substances are illegal, even in the United States. There are a few places where we're starting to open up, and it's part of my mission to educate people. Even as a physician, I'm not some hippie from the 60s that was like, hey man, let's listen to some crazy music and trip. These medicine, and look, I'm a very libertarian point of view. If that's what you want to do, you do it. It's your body. What you put into your body is your business and no one else's.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is work with MAPS and work with Congress to say, hey, we need to pull these things off the schedule, because this is treatment and this is effective and it does help. And all those SSRI nonsense where where you have big pharma in your pocket, that nonsense needs to stop,
Tell
because they
me,
are the ones that are keeping it out.
so tell me the effects with trauma and ketamine then. So how does it help with the trauma?
Well, they all work similarly. With ketamine, Ketamine is interesting. So I had 2 sessions of ketamine before I started on the psilocybin mushrooms, and it works on about 23 different receptors. And so it's a really sexy drug, but it's also a very dirty drug. It's psychiatrists call dirty drugs, meaning that they work on many different areas of the body, but they're also very sexy in how they work. And what it does is it promotes neurogenesis. So it promotes nerve cells to grow. The nerve cells that have been overclipped will grow new dendrites. And those new dendrites form and interconnect and re-relate together. And all of the psychedelics do that. So LSD does that. And we've known that for a long time. I actually just acquired a book from, I think it was from 1940, from the American Psychiatric Association meeting in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I was able to find it and take a look at what they were studying way back then. But the psilocybin mushrooms do the same thing. And what they do is they're rerouting new nerve cells and giving you better connections. Psilocybin being very dirty and very sexy, or sorry, not the psilocybin, the ketamine being very dirty and very sexy, my cluster headaches are gone. Dr. Grass, who's in Florida, who treated me, he treats people with migraine headaches. I think we're going to see it as a treatment for Parkinson's. Parkinson's is dopamine depletion. The ketamine helps, and the psilocybin also helps replenish and helps those nerve cells produce more dopamine so that they're more effective again. It should not be used in people with schizophrenia. Schizophrenic patients already have bad wiring, so what you end up doing is encouraging more bad wiring. But ketamine has been shown to help with bipolar depression. And I'm not sure about what the literature says yet about some of the other psychedelic mushrooms. I'm reading, I'm learning. Once I finish this book, then it's okay, now it's time to write the next book. And more studying and learning about what these medicines are.
So some of your treatment were you have been using the mushrooms.
Yes.
So how do you take it, and do you microdose with it? And how many sessions did you have, and what was the before and the after effects?
What's the before and after? Yeah. So after my second set of treatment with ketamine, which was, so let me finish talking about that, and then I'll get on to the mushrooms. It was interesting because my brain would just turn off. I could turn off anxiety. And my whole life, I've been very anxious. I would ruminate. Someone would cut me off, on the drive down the highway early in the morning, and at night at bedtime I would still be thinking about it and what I should say and what I should do, and it all had just this energy of its own. And with ketamine I was able to say, that's irritating, I don't want to think about that. And I could visualize a broom sweeping those thoughts away and not think about them for the rest of the day. And there were days would go by where I wouldn't think about my mother or my abuse. There are different approaches. I don't think that just giving ketamine is going to cure the PTSD. I think you have to be taken through it. The intravenous means is supposedly more effective, but you're not sitting there in talk therapy when someone is giving it to you IV. You're just there in a very quiet area, and you want quiet because you get hyperacusis, and it can, any sounds and noises can be very irritating to the patient and create a very bad experience. The psilocybin is less, a little hyperacusis, but not as irritating. There is some noise that goes on. Interestingly, it stops my tinnitus. So when I am under the influence, I get immediate relief. I can actually hear quiet. It's just Oh, you don't realize how much you miss it until you actually have quiet, like, wow, that quiet is just so nice. I don't hear anything. It's wonderful. I could just hear the birds and not this, irritating ring in my ears. But I'm sorry, what was the question about the
So
psilocybin?
yeah,
Okay,
how many
you
sessions
consume it.
kind of before and the after?
Yeah, you consume it. The first time I made a tea with it. After that, some people create these chocolate bars with them, with the mushrooms. I don't like the taste of them. I have to really do a lot to hide the taste. I make like a pudding. So I'm actually eating the mushrooms themselves, but I make a vegan pudding with some avocados and blueberries, and I throw a lot of sweetener in it, and I throw in a lot of raw cacao, and I blend it all together. And then my husband always laughs at me because I have this, big ring of chocolate around me because I'm I don't microdose. I don't like the feeling of it. And I also don't like, keep in mind it's neurogenic. So when I feel every nerve in my body, at least it feels like that. So while the visuals are very pleasing and very beautiful, and I've never had an experience like on the first day that I ever had those, because it brings you back to like this childlike wonder, and everything is very beautiful. But my body hurts afterwards, and like every nerve feels raw and growing because my nerves are growing, and so they all feel raw. And it makes me think that will there be an implication for diabetics? Because diabetics, their nerves start dying, those end nerves are dying, and if we give mushrooms, maybe they'll start growing and will stop the neurologic progression. I don't know, maybe it will, but these are all areas of study that I think we need. I think diabetes, that it'll play a role, and in it helps with mental health. It may help with Parkinson's. And I had a friend who has Parkinson's, and she took a little bit of mushrooms, and I asked her, I said, she has hypophonia. So when she talks in a whisper and you can barely hear her, and it's very slow. Now she's from New Jersey. We talk loud, and she was the fastest. I mean, I could never keep up with her rate of speech. From people from South Jersey talk very quickly. I could never keep up with her rate, but now she's talking slowly, and you can barely hear her. And about 20 minutes after she consumed just a teeny bit of mushrooms, like what would be considered a microdose, I said, "Hey, honey, how you feeling?" "I don't feel anything yet." And her husband and my husband and I were laughing. We're like, yeah, it's like,
So
yeah, you
how
don't feel
many
anything yet.
treatments have you had then? How many have you
I
had? And
think I've had
what?
about 12. I've had about 12. I'm still working there. I mean, I'm about 90% better. I'm not 100%. I still have some backpedaling. I still have, fall back. It's a journey. It's
Yeah,
not a destination, right?
yeah.
I'm striving for 99% better. I'll settle with that. But I still have I've been very bitter my whole life, understandably. Um, but I've also had this anger that will spill out, that I really feel is more of the survivalist in me, that I'm very sensitive to how others feel around me. I'm very sensitive to those slights. And when the least bit that may or may not be benign, I would react to that very emotionally and sometimes very forcefully. And it's not gone, but it's a whole lot better. And it's at a point where I can say, okay, I think I just need to go meditate now. And sometimes I do need to have a little bit of mushrooms again to break that up and break that apart. And then I'm calmer again. And at this point, I'm putting a lot of meditation in my practice, 1 to 2 times a day. I probably need it 3 times a day. I started my morning with meditation this morning. And I'm also doing other things, taking care of myself and taking care of my body. I'm exercising every day. I finished 2 sets of my upper body weights this morning before I spoke with you. I've got 3 more sets left.
Nice.
I'm eating better. I'm eating far more. At one time, I was vegan and eating raw vegan foods, and I'm adding more raw plant foods into my diet. I do think that my blood sugars have been chronically high, probably because of all the cortisol that's also in my body, that's also fueling that inflammation. And so those kinds of things are improving because I'm improving my diet. I've lost weight. I've lost inches. I've lost 2.5 inches off my hips. I'm so proud. And 2 inches off 2.5 off my waist and 2 inches off the top. And hopefully that part stays the same. And, we're still but we're moving forward, and I'm taking care of my body and I'm taking care of myself. It's really the first time in my life where I'm dedicating this time to taking care of me. There's the saying, when you heal the mother, you heal the child. And so the more I'm healed, the better mother I am, and the more secure my children are. That's
Yeah.
what I'm.
I
Yeah.
love the fact, because it was the same for me when I began that journey of healing and really going inwards. They were the things that I really started with, was journaling. And when journaling ended up becoming my book, I did a lot of self-love
Mhm.
meditation. I did
Yes.
a lot of positive affirmations.
Yes.
I too work out every day. So every morning I'll get up, I get my favorite music on, full blast, and I will do a low impact workout with my weights as well. So there's loads of things that I know that I want to do now every day
Right.
because it's healing me, it's fixing me, it's filling
Exactly.
me up. And it's
Yes.
just so important, isn't it, to be able
Yes.
to do that. And I think when you have been through any form of trauma and you're not ready to heal, you are doing the wrong things, you are eating the wrong,
Yeah.
you are you're just reaching for like a plaster, basically, aren't you, all the
Yeah.
time? Something to kind of cover it up in some way. But actually,
Yeah.
when you begin your healing journey, you start bringing all these new things into your life that really, really support you. Is there
Yes.
anything? What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I get up in the morning, I meditate. Um, I do my social media promotion. Take my kid now, the kids are back in school, so I take them to school. I get to drive by Highway 1 along the coast, and I look out at that beautiful, gorgeous coast. Sometimes I stop for coffee, sometimes it's for tea. I go out into my forest. I have an area where I enjoy looking over the valley, and I pray. Um, then I come back and I, fiddle in the house, take care of the dogs and such. And then I come up to my office and I either write, or I'm starting a new career as a real estate investor. So I'm working towards real estate investing. And then by the evening, I spend more time with my family, and then I go to bed early because my husband has to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work. So we we are in bed by about 7:30. We're just old
Wow.
people who go to bed
But do
early.
you know what? I absolutely love going to bed early.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd be saying the day, I used to be the one that used to be partying all night
Yeah.
and what have you. But I can't think of anything better than getting in
Going to bed and going
9
to sleep.
o'clock, and yeah, it's just bliss. You know, your things change, don't they, as you get older, but
Yeah. And it's amazing what you get done by 11 a.m. But I wanted to follow up with you on, you know, healing and what you need to do. It takes a lot of courage to want to heal.
it does.
It takes a lot of courage. And because we are so fearful that of those, what if I no longer have those mechanisms to survive, then what? Because the body wants to survive, the brain wants to survive, the person in you, the soul wants to survive in you for as long as possible. And you have that fear of what's on that other side. And that other side is hope, is honor. That other side is thriving. And you need to transition into that, and you will thrive because there will be nothing stopping you. But you also have to look at what is it that's keeping you in that place. And I think it's shame.
Yeah.
For most people, it was, and guilt and fear of being found out. When I was in Mary Kay, I had a discussion with my director, my adopted director. And I said, I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of success. Because what is success mean? Success means that I'm going to be in the spotlight and people are going to know. They're going to know what happened. And then they're going to look at my parents and they're going to be very angry. I read an email this morning. You know, I finished chapter 16 and I have one of my classmates from medical school reading it, just kind of doing the once over, checking to make sure mistakes, that kind of making suggestions. And he wrote back, I hate your stepfather. I just hate him. Like he said, what did he say? Not vindication. He didn't want vindication. He wanted justice. I want justice. And I know where he is right now. And the book is evoking that because these people are that horrible and they do atrocious things, but they're broken people and they hurt people. He was such a hurt child that he went on to hurt more other children. And, you know, I really believe that God sent me here to heal, and I couldn't heal them. I failed at healing them. This is their last chance. They're at the end of their life. They haven't redeemed themselves. I've always protected my mother from this. One of the things that people would say, and my friend hasn't gotten to the point yet because it's 4 chapters away, but the last sentence of, where was your mother? And it's a common question that gets asked of me, and I would defend her. I would just defend her and say, well, you know, he was a brute force. But what the treatment is allowing me to see, the doors that it's unlocking, is no, it was your mother the whole time. And you get with wanting to heal, getting ready for it. You know, I'm 55 years old. I started this journey a year and a half ago. And, you know, I've had therapy before. I've been on all the SSRIs, the SNRIs, the Wellbutrin, the Mirtazapine. I've been on it all. None of it was curative. And so I just held off for a long while. And I wanted to go to Jamaica for this treatment because I know they do it there. And then the lockdowns came. And so it wasn't afforded to me at that time. And I came to a turning point. My mother came out to visit. I was hoping that it was going to be a good visit. Only about every third visit is a good visit, according to my husband. I'm like, really? You think that? You're like, well, what about, when we went to, the coast? He's like, don't you remember what happened in Casa de Fruta, where she would refuse to put on shoes to go into the store? Like, oh yeah, that was a big problem. And my mother will drum up this drama. She's comfortable in drama. And the last trip that she was here, I found myself, like I always do, getting my hair done, putting on my makeup, putting on some decent outfit, cleaning the whole house as best I can, trying to take away any amount of ammunition that she could give to me. And lo and behold, I get there, everything's great, big hug, I missed you too, put everything in, get ready to go into the car. And she starts, look at all the mud in your car. Like, Mom, I live in Mendocino. It's raining and it's muddy here. Well, I just think it's a shame. That's all. You paid all this money for this car. I think you should take care of it. And she just went on. And within 10 minutes of the drive, there was a racist comment. And it just, her nastiness and her poison grew exponentially. And when it came to dropping her back off at the airport, I turned around and pushed those doors and said, I'm never bringing her back here again. And a couple days later, I was on a plane going to out to Sarasota, Florida, to get my first ketamine treatment. I had one last conversation with her on her birthday, which is at the end of February. And that's the last time I've spoken to my mother. I mean, I've forgiven her since then, but forgiveness too is a journey. It's never a final destination. You forgive and things are okay. And then you remember something else that's kind of getcha.
Yeah.
And then you're a little angry again and you got to expel that anger.
And forgiveness, because there's a few things that I just want to pick up on. So fear is huge barrier for loads and loads of people. Yeah. Me definitely as well, because I want to get onto your book in a second.
Yeah.
I wrote my book, published it, and I sat on it for 6 months without telling a soul.
Yeah.
Because of fear. It was this fear of, oh my God, what will people say? I'm opening this can of worms, all about my life. A friend actually said to me, she said, oh, you're not publishing that, are you? But that was her fear projecting onto me.
Yes.
Be careful
who you say this to. Exactly.
And when she said that, then that's going through my mind. Oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And then 6 months later, something in me, I kind of plucked up the courage. I started talking in smaller groups about the book. And then something in my head, I got this epic moment. And I thought, no, it's more than me. It's not even about me anymore. It's about helping other survivors along the way. And in the back of the book were all the self-help techniques that I personally used. And I needed to tell other survivors out there.
Exactly.
And so fear is huge. And I think you just do not know what's at that other side. And then that gives you anxiety because oh, no, I can't move forward. So it's all this, isn't it? And I think once you learn to step into that fear, that's when the change happens. That is when the magic happens. And you're writing your own book, your chapter 17, you said?
So the whole book is written. I've written it 4 times. Just the final edit. Okay. So I have 7 more chapters to edit. I'm probably gonna put an afterbird. I think there's one more paragraph I need to put into the last chapter about my hair. You'll read the chapter about hair, you'll understand, where that comes in. And I'm ready to publish it. I can't wait to publish it. And I have, you really want, I see we don't have much time. Or are we going to go over and have a second go at this?
We're okay. We've got we're okay for time. Well, we've got about 9 more minutes.
Okay. So you can't go through this alone. You don't want to do through this alone. It's a team effort. And just like in medical school, when I first left that abuse, that violent home, I had money for school. They told me that I could have, money to support myself. And I had a home. And I had friends, really, for the first time in my life. And my friends helped me out of there. And they were my team. And prior to, I was gearing up to make a major life change. I knew I needed a change. I wasn't happy doing telepsychiatry. I ended up getting fired from one job, and I was actually happy about it because I hated the job. And I got a coach. So I started out with the coach, and I had already been assembling my team, which were my classmates from medical school. I needed more than just my husband. And my husband certainly needed more. He needed, support too. And I got my classmates together for a reunion. So it was supposed to be, we were locked down for the 25th reunion. So we made it the 26th reunion and we got together in Vegas. And I've been creating this, they were my family back then. They're my sisters and brothers in spirit now still. And they're constantly saying, way to go, DM. This is fantastic. We're so happy for you. Like, keep it up. And they've been my biggest cheerleaders through all this. And I don't think I ever could have written this book without them. I really couldn't have. And I couldn't have written this book with without my healer too. I mean, I had to heal.
What's the title? Are we allowed to know the title?
Yes. So it's called The Offering, which has a great double entendre. It's called The Offering, and the subtitle is A Physician's Journey Through Abuse, Psychedelics, and the Freedom of Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, right. Can I talk? That was the other thing that I wanted to just discuss with you.
Forgiveness.
We had a whole topic in what we had. We used to meet on an app called Clubhouse. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you go into different rooms basically and you talk about different subjects. And this particular subject was on forgiveness. Now, I'm a believer, and I don't know what your opinion is on it, but I'm a believer of forgiving yourself.
Yes.
It's not about forgiving others. It's about forgiving yourself.
Forgiving yourself. You forgive yourself first. Yes.
Other people were like, oh, no, it's about forgiving others. So where do you sit on this? Because for me, I think it's just about forgiving myself, and then you can kind of let things go. How do you see it? How do you see forgiveness?
So forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness, I have a whole another topic on forgiveness that could take about another 20 minutes or 30 minutes, because it was what my stepfather said to me after the Cunnilingus episode when I was 13. He said, I need you to forgive me. I need you to forgive me. I need you to forgive me. And meditation was his form of, was one of the forms of grooming that he used. And so those two things, meditation and forgiveness, were poison to me for the longest time. My coach said, Dawnmarie, you need to forgive him. But my healer said, Dawnmarie, you need to forgive yourself. For why did you carry the shame? Why did you carry the hurt? Why did you carry the guilt? You have to, and the shame is one of the most difficult things to get over, is getting rid of that shame. It's such a heavy weight. and giving that shame back to them. I have a whole chapter on shame, and I just give it to them. Like, you know, this is your shame. Like this doesn't belong to me. This belongs to you. I'm giving this back to you. You carry the shame now, because
Yeah.
these are the things you did. I didn't do anything. I was, I was the one that was the victim. I was on the other side of this. I was a little kid who couldn't defend herself. And so, so forgiving yourself for why you carried all of that, and why you protected them. Because I protected my brothers, I protected my mother and my stepfather and my father. I protected them all. And I don't need to protect them anymore. What am I protecting them from? I'm doing them a favor. I'm
Mhm.
giving them what, here it is, all laid out. Now you have the opportunity to bow down before God and ask for mercy, and to say, I'm sorry. And that's their opportunity. That's their chance before they die. And
And often I don't even think you get a sorry, do you? So,
no, and yeah, there, if you're looking for closure, you're never going to get it.
no,
You're likely
no,
never going to get it. And we look at television shows and books and things, and the parents come back and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry." No, they never do.
no.
You're never going to find that. It doesn't happen. It's likely not going to, the likelihood that's going to happen is so very rare.
Yeah,
But you can say you're sorry to yourself, and you can heal the generations to come, that these
yeah,
things aren't going to, that is not going to happen in your home. And the yelling is one of the hardest things that I do have to get rid of. I mean, it pipes up, but I'm learning to contain it. It's like, okay, I'm not going to yell when I'm driving. I'm going to pull over, and my kids are teenagers, so they're just awful. The way they speak, like, excuse me, how did you speak with me? Let's pull over and talk for a minute, because that's not going to happen. That's no, 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 no. I hear what you're saying, but no, that's not going to happen. So we're going to
right.
have a pleasant drive to school today. And you just have to set the boundaries. It's all part of growing up. They're testing the limits. They're seeing what they can get away with. And, I'm learning
Nice.
to be like, okay, this is part of being a kid. It's painful.
It's
It's
hard, isn't it?
challenging.
It is hard.
But it's getting there. It's
Can't,
hard. And every parent goes through it, and every kid goes through it. I think for the hardest part of me is saying, what is normal? Because we don't know what normal is. And
exactly.
yeah, and that's where, like, sometimes television shows come in, like This Is Us, or like, just these astounding. The father was astounding. The mother was kind of nasty to the daughter. She was not very nice. Um, but all of these, I try to watch when I binge watch television shows, and it's always a binge. It's never once a week. It's a whole weekend in bed, and I watch 10 years of a series. But it's looking at that, saying, okay, this is how a real family is supposed to be. That's what I look to for guidance.
So,
So
offering, tell me, when do we expect it to be published, and where can we get it,
I'd like September
and how
23rd.
much
I
will it
wanted it
be?
back in February. I was trying in February, where I'm giving myself some grace. I want to close this chapter of my life, and start a whole another chapter of thriving, and empowering others to heal and to get healed,
Nice.
to stand before Congress and say, look, we have to bring this off the schedule, to and ultimately, also, as much as we want to heal the victims, we also have to heal the perpetrators. And can they heal? And that's why I'm digging into past literature and looking at what did they do many years ago when these materials were first available. And they have tested these in jails and in state hospitals. And I want to look at that to see, okay, let's analyze this study. was this just a pilot study, and can we grow these studies to help the perpetrators, because they really are broken people. I worked, most of my career has been in forensics, and a large majority of my career has been working with sexually violent predators, from the prison setting as well as in the jail settings or in the state hospital setting. And they do much better in prison than they do in the state hospital as far as their behaviors, because the other inmates that are not sexual violent predators won't tolerate that behavior. And so they behave. So they know how to behave when they have to behave. But when they're allowed to show their true colors, they are out of control, and very dangerous individuals. So, but we have to figure out what those materials are, and it may be in some of the materials I already mentioned. The back literature demonstrates that, and that's what I'm getting into. That's what I'll be getting into
So
next.
book release date. Book release date.
September 23rd. That's
September
I
23rd.
hope so. September
Amazing.
23rd. Yeah, I have some
Amazing.
photos to get taken and some other things, and the website to pump out, and I'm hoping that the book will be completely finished within the next 10 days, and then I can close the book and get all the finalization and get it out. So we're looking at September 23rd. So stay tuned.
Nice, nice. So we are coming to the end of the
Yes,
podcast. You've been an amazing guest, so
thank you.
interesting. And, it's interesting about the different ways that you've learned to heal and the psychedelics that you've been using on that journey. Um, for anybody else that wants to find anything else out about that, can people get in touch with you or?
So, well, I can tell you right now. So, psilocybin mushrooms are decriminalized in Oakland, California, and in Washington, D.C. They are, and maps.org has a list of people who have been trained in psychedelic medicine. There's a lot of underground treatment. I think it's far more common than not common, at least here in California. Um, there is treatment in Oregon. There's legal treatment in Oregon. Oregon State has allowed these facilities to open, and they're highly regulated. And Colorado also has. Arizona is starting. I believe it was Arizona that is also starting. So more states are jumping in to say, okay, there's something here, and they're supporting their residents and representing their people. Mexico has DMT and ayahuasca treatment. It's something I'm interested in, and I may jump into that realm when finances are a little better. So I may jump into that, if anything, just for the experience. And that is supposed to be really life-changing, is the ayahuasca and DMT together. I know that there are facilities in Jamaica and Peru as well. So you can just get online and you can find it. You can look up, ayahuasca DMT treatment in Mexico, or, I've looked at, who are the best treatments or the most reliable, or, but don't go alone. Go with someone to make sure that the two of you are together and can get taken care of. So, yeah.
Dawnmarie, thank you so
You're welcome.
much for being on the podcast Heal with the Real. Really, really appreciate your time
Thank
and your
you.
expertise and coming on and talking about your experience and being so vulnerable for the audience. Thank
Thank you.
you so, so much. Any final words before we go?
Heal. Honor yourself to heal. You are worth it. You are worthy of healing. There is something great for you. God has some real big picture for you. Don't live small. You are not your abuse. You are so much more beyond that. And namaste.
Beautiful.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye bye.